My name is Ethan, 34 years old, and for 15 of those years, I've been bleeding for Taylor & Sons Plumbing, or, more accurately, bleeding for my dad, Robert Taylor, and my golden boy brother, Caleb. It's supposed to be Taylor & Sons, the sons being Caleb and me. But the reality? It's Taylor and the favored one. And then there's me, the grunt. Dad built this empire from the ground up. A classic story, one man, a beat-up van, and a dream. Now, we've got 15 plumbers on staff, 3 office workers, and we're one of the biggest operations in the county. And I'm not just flattering myself when I say that a significant chunk of that growth happened on my watch. Right after high school, I buckled down and got a real business management degree. Meanwhile, Caleb barely scraped through high school and took 6 years to get a 2-year degree from community college. 6 years of gym selfies and bar hopping. I was studying balance sheets. He was studying the best way to pick up chicks. I walked straight into the family business after graduation. Dad made a huge performance of how I needed to learn from the bottom up. Translation: 3 years as a plumber's assistant, unclogging toilets, crawling through crawl spaces filled with God knows what. I get it! You can't manage plumbers if you don't know the job. I busted my ass. Got my master plumber's license, which is a pain in the ass, by the way. Learned scheduling, inventory, all the boring but vital crap that makes a business tick. 60-hour weeks became the norm. Missed weddings, canceled dates. My personal life became a casualty of copper pipes and overflowing septic tanks. Then, 5 years ago, I finally clawed my way to operations manager. I put all my plans in motion: digital scheduling, smarter inventory management, automated follow-up calls. Our online reviews shot up from 3.5 stars to a solid 4.8. Revenue jumped 40% in 2 years. Dad actually seemed impressed. For once. Then Caleb, who up until that point had been flitting between bartending gigs and finding himself, suddenly decided he wanted a piece of the pie. This guy couldn't tell PVC from copper if his life depended on it. He thought a P-trap was for catching rodents. But Dad? Dad was ecstatic. His golden boy was finally joining the family legacy. Dad gave him some bullshit title like Director of Client Relations, with a salary that was practically 80% of mine, even though I'd been here a decade longer. Caleb got an office with a window, while I was still crammed in the converted closet next to the bathroom. Caleb's job? Taking clients to lunch, posting on our social media, occasionally showing up at job sites to take pictures, always making damn sure he was in the frame, looking like he was overseeing everything. He strolled in at 10, took 2-hour lunches, and bailed by 4 to beat the traffic. Every staff meeting, Dad praised Caleb for landing some pissant contract while completely ignoring that I'd just streamlined our entire billing system and saved us $50,000 a year. I was invisible. I remember this one time, I spent weeks putting together a bid for a massive commercial job, the biggest contract we'd ever gone after. A proposal thick enough to be a damn doorstop. I pulled an all-nighter to finish it. Day of the presentation, Dad brings Caleb. Caleb, who hadn't read a single page of the proposal. Caleb, who was hungover and kept excusing himself to puke. Caleb, who called the client building that big place with the sign during the meeting. We somehow landed the contract because my numbers were solid. On the drive back, Dad couldn't stop gushing about how Caleb connected with their team and how his people skills sealed the deal. My contribution? Dad said my attention to detail was helpful. Helpful, like I was the freaking office assistant. Mom? She knows. When I try to talk to her, she gives me this pitying look and spouts crap like, you and your brother are just different kinds of people. Or not everyone can be as organized as you are, as if being competent was a character flaw. Then one day, I overheard Dad talking to Caleb in his office. The door wasn't fully closed. Dad was going on about succession planning, talking about when you take over the company, and asking Caleb if he wanted to start learning the financial side. My name didn't come up. Not even in passing. The company I helped build. The company I've given my entire adult life to. And I'm not even considered a potential owner. Just the damn workhorse who keeps things running while Caleb gets all the glory. I swallowed it all, kept my head down. What else could I do? About 9 months ago, our admin assistant quit, lured away by a better offer. Dad decided we needed someone with more office management experience. Since we were growing. Enter Julie, 29 years old, and the minute she walked through the door for her interview, something shifted inside me. She had this confident walk, dark hair always pulled back in this neat bun, and these green eyes that seemed to see right through all the fake corporate bullshit. She wasn't one of those Instagram model types that Caleb usually went for. Julie was beautiful in this classy, put-together way. Her resume was insane. Business degree, experience managing offices for companies way bigger than ours, certifications in accounting software. Dad was impressed enough to hire her on the spot, which he never did. Her first week, she completely reorganized our filing system, which hadn't been touched since the freaking 90s. Second week, she found like $20,000 in overlooked billing from the previous year and got it collected. Third week, she stood up to my dad about our prehistoric scheduling system and convinced him to invest in the software I'd been begging for years. I was basically gone, head over heels. We started grabbing lunch together in the break room. At first, it was just work stuff. Then we discovered we both listened to the same true crime podcast. Turns out she loved hiking, which is a passion of mine. Then it was movies, books, everything. It was so easy talking to her. Not like those awkward Tinder dates where you're desperately trying to think of something to say. After a couple of months of break room lunches, I finally worked up the courage to ask her out for real. Dinner on Friday night at that new Thai place downtown. Not the break room with our sad Tupperware. She said yes, right away, smiling in a way that made me feel like maybe I wasn't just the family doormat. The following Friday was set. I was stupidly excited, even caught myself whistling while fixing a sink at a job site, which definitely confused the hell out of the apprentice working with me. I didn't tell anyone at work about the date. My family has a special talent for ruining anything good that happens to me. I figured I'd keep it quiet until things got more serious. Big mistake! 2 days before the date, I got back from a job and heard Julie laughing in the hallway. That genuine laugh I'd been working weeks to earn. But she wasn't laughing at something I said. She was laughing at something Caleb said. I rounded the corner to see them standing way too close to each other by the coffee machine. Caleb doing his signature lean against the wall, how cool my pose. He was showing her something on his phone, and she was actually interested in whatever garbage he was spouting. "Hey, Ethan," Caleb called out when he saw me, using that fake brotherly voice he uses when other people are around. Just showing Julie those kayaking pics from last weekend. Kayaking? Caleb? The guy who complains if he has to walk from his car to a restaurant in the rain? The guy who once asked me if the river near our house had those fish things in it? Since when does he freaking kayak? Julie smiled at me, but it wasn't the same smile. Just polite, professional, the kind you give a coworker. Not the guy you're supposed to have dinner with. My stomach dropped. "They're amazing photos," Julie said, turning back to Caleb. "I've always wanted to try kayaking, but never had the chance." "You should come with me sometime," Caleb said, flashing that stupid smile that somehow works on women. "I go most weekends when the weather's good. Very peaceful out on the water." This dude has never gone kayaking in his life. The closest he's gotten to a water sport is drinking beer on someone else's boat. But there he was, Mr. Outdoorsy, all of a sudden. "That would be amazing," Julie said, and she actually meant it. I could tell. She turned to me. "Ethan, I didn't know your brother was so into outdoor activities." "Neither did I muttered, but they were already back to scrolling through his phone, which I guarantee had stock photos of kayaks or pictures he found online. The next day, Julie caught me alone in the break room. My heart jumped a little, thinking maybe the Caleb interaction was nothing. About Friday, she started, and I immediately knew what was coming. I'm really sorry, but I need to reschedule. Something came up. Something came up is the universal code for I found a better offer. And in this case, the better offer was clearly my brother. No problem, I said, trying to sound casual. Maybe another time. Definitely, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The kind of smile that says, this is never happening. Sure enough, I found out later through office gossip that Julie and Caleb had their first date that Friday, the same day she was supposed to go out with me, at the same Thai restaurant I had planned to take her to. The next week was torture. Caleb strutting around the office like he'd won the lottery, Julie blushing every time he walked by her desk, the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered the room, Caleb casually mentioning their date in the staff meeting. I felt like garbage. Every time I tried to build something for myself, Caleb swooped in and took it over, like it was his to begin with. And, of course, it got worse. Mom caught wind of it immediately because Caleb tells her everything. She called that weekend, all excited. Have you met this Julie that Caleb is seeing? He says she's just wonderful, so accomplished and pretty. She works at your office. She's our office manager, I said flatly. Well, isn't that nice? Caleb says she's very smart, organized too. Sounds like she and Caleb have so much in common. They have nothing in common except maybe existing on the same planet. But sure, Mom, they're soulmates. Actually, Mom, Julie and I were supposed to go out first. I asked her out and she said yes, but then Caleb swooped in. There was this long pause. I could practically hear Mom trying to process this information in a way that didn't make her precious. Caleb looked bad. Well, sweetie, you know how these things go. Sometimes people just connect. Caleb has always been so charming with the ladies. You're more, well, focused on work. Serious. Not everyone appreciates that like they should. She basically said that Caleb's hot and fun, and I'm boring. Deal with it. So, that's how it started. Caleb and Julie, the new power couple of Taylor and Sons Plumbing. But the worst part wasn't even losing Julie. It was watching her slowly realize who Caleb really was and pretending not to see it. The first time he flaked on plans with her because his buddies invited him to a last-minute poker game. The time she overheard him exaggerating, straight up lying, about his role in the company to a client. The time she had to cover for him when he was supposed to attend a networking event but was too hungover to show up. I could see the confusion on her face, the mental gymnastics as she tried to reconcile the Caleb. She thought she was dating with the actual Caleb. But by then, they were official, and she was in too deep. Plus, my family had circled the wagons around them. Mom invited Julie to Sunday dinner just 3 weeks after they started dating. It'll be nice to have a fresh face, she said. Like our weekly family dinners weren't already painful enough without adding my work crush who'd chosen my brother over me. I almost skipped that dinner, but Dad made it clear it wasn't optional. Family dinner is family dinner, Ethan. Be there. So I went, and it was exactly the nightmare you'd expect. Mom pulling out all the stops with her best china and a fancy roast. Dad telling work stories that made Caleb sound like some kind of business prodigy. Caleb performing his perfect son-boyfriend routine, pulling out Julie's chair, refilling her water glass, telling completely made-up stories about his adventurous weekends and charity work. Julie ate it all up, laughing at Caleb's jokes, asking him questions about his fake hiking trips, while I sat there, knowing for a fact that the closest Caleb gets to outdoor adventure is when he has to park at the far end of the mall parking lot. I tried to join the conversation, mentioning the hiking trail Julie and I had talked about over those break room lunches, just to let him know what he ruined. Oh, Caleb was just telling me about that place, Julie exclaimed, turning to him excitedly. You've been there too? Been there? Caleb laughed. I practically live on that trail in the summer. Sure, he suddenly Bear Grylls. That dinner was 6 months ago. They've been officially dating ever since. Anyway, I focused on myself and tried to adapt to it, praying for things to get better for me. I knew that good things would come. About a month after that dinner, I finally got promoted to Senior Operations Manager. After 15 years of killing myself for this company, this was supposed to be a big deal. More responsibility, better pay, and, most importantly, the company vehicle. Nothing fancy, just a new Ford F-250 with all the towing capacity we needed for hauling equipment to job sites. Dad made a big announcement at our monthly staff meeting. After years of dedicated service, Ethan is being promoted to Senior Operations Manager. This comes with a nice raise and the new company truck we just purchased. Well deserved, son. For once, I felt like my work was actually being recognized. I even let myself get excited about having a decent vehicle for the first time in my life, instead of my rusted-out Chevy that's held together with duct tape and prayers. Fast forward to Sunday dinner. Mom's making her famous pot roast. Dad's talking about some client. Caleb's got his arm around Julie, as usual. I'm just trying to get through the meal without saying something I'll regret. Then Dad clears his throat and puts down his fork. I've got an announcement to make, he says, and I immediately tense up because, in my family, announcements are never good news for me. Caleb and Julie exchange a look, and I just know what's coming. We're engaged, Julie says, holding out her left hand with this massive diamond ring that probably cost more than my yearly salary. Mom bursts into happy tears. Dad starts clapping Caleb on the back. I'm sitting there in shock, my fork frozen halfway to my mouth. This is wonderful news. Dad booms. My boy's finally settling down, starting a family. Then he drops the real bomb. Caleb, I think you and your future bride could use that new truck more than the company could. Consider it an engagement present. You'll need a good family vehicle now. Caleb does this fake surprised face, like this wasn't his plan all along. Wow, Dad, that's so generous. I finally found my voice. Dad, that truck is supposed to be part of my promotion package. I need it for work, for actual company business. Dad waves his hand dismissively. Now, Ethan, don't be selfish. Your brother's starting a family. Family comes first. You can keep using your old truck for now. It still runs, doesn't it? Barely, I said, but nobody's listening. They're all busy congratulating the happy couple, talking about wedding plans, future grandkids. That was it. The final straw. The moment I knew I was done with this family business crap forever, rage was bubbling up inside me. I was fuming, but somehow managed to drive home in my piece of crap truck, which decided to make a concerning rattling noise the whole way, just to really drive home the point that it was on its last legs. Perfect timing. I got home and completely lost it. 15 years. 15 years of loyalty, hard work, and sacrifice. 15 years of watching Caleb coast through life on charm and Dad's favoritism while I actually built something valuable, something profitable, something that was apparently just handed away, again, to my brother. And now, Julie, the one good thing that had happened to me in years, also handed to Caleb on a silver platter, complete with an engagement ring and my company truck. I don't think I've ever been that angry in my life. It wasn't even hot, explosive anger. It was this cold, calculated fury where suddenly everything became crystal clear. I was never going to be valued in this family. I was never going to get what I deserved. I was just the workhorse, the reliable one they could dump on, while Golden Boy got all the rewards. I grabbed my laptop and opened my email, stared at the blank compose window for like 10 seconds, then just started typing. Subject line, my resignation, Dad, effective immediately. I am resigning from Taylor & Sons Plumbing. Consider this my 2 weeks' notice, although, frankly, you'll be lucky if I last out the week. I will be pursuing other opportunities. Sincerely, not really, Ethan Taylor. I hit send before I could chicken out. Then I sent a separate email to our HR person, who's really just the bookkeeper who handles payroll, about my accrued vacation time, saying I'd be taking it effective immediately. I was not setting foot in that office again. Within minutes, my phone started blowing up. Dad calling! Caleb texting nothing but WTF and stupid emojis. Mom leaving these tearful voicemails about tearing the family apart and just being dramatic. Julie called too. I let that one go to voicemail. Ethan, it's Julie. Your dad told me you quit. What's going on? Please call me back. Like she didn't know. Like she hadn't been part of this whole mess. I ignored all of them, turned off my phone, and started updating my resume. I was done with them. Done with being the family workhorse. Done with watching Caleb get everything handed to him while I worked myself to death for scraps of recognition. Dad showed up at my apartment the next morning at 7 a.m., pounding on the door like he was trying to break it down. What the hell, Ethan? He yelled when I finally opened it, still in my pajamas and not at all ready for this confrontation. Quitting over email? After everything this family has done for you? I actually laughed in his face. Done for me? You mean like paying me less than market rate for 15 years while Caleb gets bonuses for showing up to work? Or like promising me a company vehicle as part of my promotion and then giving it to Caleb as an engagement present? That's different. Dad sputtered, his face getting red. Caleb's starting a family. He needs our support. And I don't? I've supported this entire family for years. Who do you think keeps the business running while Caleb's out taking 2-hour lunches and posting on Instagram? Dad's face got even redder. Don't talk about your brother that way. Caleb brings in clients. He's the face of the company. And I'm what? The workhorse? The sucker who actually does the work while Caleb gets all the credit? I'm done, Dad. Let Caleb handle your business. You don't need me anyway. I started to close the door, but Dad stuck his foot in the way. Classic. You walk away from this company, you walk away from this family, he said, all dramatic like we're in some bad TV show. If this is how family treats each other, then maybe that's for the best. I shot back and pushed the door hard enough that he had to move his foot. He kept pounding and yelling for a while, but eventually gave up and left. The next day, Caleb showed up. I didn't even open the door, just yelled through it that he should leave before I called the cops. He tried the whole, come on bro, don't be like that routine, but I wasn't having it. Mom kept calling, crying about how I was breaking your father's heart and tearing the family apart, as if I was the problem here, as if 15 years of favoritism and disrespect was somehow my fault. And despite all the drama, I've never felt so free in my life. The job hunt was surprisingly easy. I had 3 interviews that first week, all with companies bigger and more professional than my dad's outfit. 2 of them made offers. I took the job with Wilson Plumbing and Heating, a competitor across town. They're smaller but growing fast, and the owner, Dave Wilson, actually values experience and hard work. Novel concept, right? Best part? They offered me a partnership track in writing. After 2 years, I'll have the option to buy in and become part owner. Something my dad never even considered offering me despite 15 freaking years of service. Oh, and they gave me a company truck, a brand new Ford F350 Super Duty, better than the one Dad took from me. Fully loaded with the company logo on the side and everything. I made sure to drive it past my parents' house my first week. Petty? Yeah. Satisfying as hell? Yes. Meanwhile, the Taylor & Sons empire was apparently crumbling without me. I've been getting texts from some of the plumbers who are actually decent guys. The stories are better than any revenge fantasy I could have dreamed up. First week after I left, Dad tried to handle operations himself. Problem is, he hasn't actually done that job in like 15 years and had no clue how my scheduling system worked. He ended up double booking 3 different crews on the same day, then had no one available for an emergency call at the hospital. That's a major account that I personally handled for years. They were not happy. Second week, Dad put Caleb in charge of operations. Caleb, the guy who can't even remember to schedule his own dentist appointments, Predictably, it was a total disaster. According to my buddy Steve, one of our senior plumbers, Caleb showed up late every day, spent most of his time on the phone with Julie or his buddies, and couldn't answer basic questions about job specifications. They lost one of our biggest commercial client contracts completely because Caleb forgot to submit the renewal paperwork. That account was worth like $50,000 a year, gone because Caleb was too busy posting gym selfies or whatever the hell he does all day. The scheduling is such a mess that they've had to call clients the night before to reschedule, which is making everyone furious. Their online reviews have dropped from 4.8 stars to 3.2 in 3 weeks. Dad's apparently blaming the new system, my system, not the idiots trying to run it. One of the office staff quit because Caleb kept blaming her for his mistakes. The accounts receivable is piling up because no one's staying on top of invoicing. That was another thing I handled that apparently no one knew about. And what I didn't expect is that Dad had to take out a short-term loan to cover payroll because their cash flow is so messed up. The business that was solidly profitable 3 weeks ago is now scrambling to stay afloat. Julie's apparently staying late every night trying to keep things running, but she's an office manager, not an operations specialist. She can organize files and answer phones all day long, but she doesn't know the first thing about scheduling plumbing jobs or managing a crew of 15 plumbers with different skills and certifications. She didn't know what she was getting into with my family. Made your bed, lie in it, right? Mom's been texting me nonstop, increasingly desperate messages. Your father's working 16-hour days trying to sort out the schedule. Caleb's really trying, but he doesn't understand your system. We had to tell 3 clients we can't get to them this week. Notice how none of these messages include an actual apology or admission that they screwed up? Classic Taylor family. Dad left me exactly 1 voicemail, slurring his words like he'd been drinking. This business was fine before your fancy systems, and it'll be fine after. You think you're irreplaceable? No one's irreplaceable. Yeah, Dad. Keep telling yourself that while your business circles the drain. Caleb's messages have evolved from fake brotherly concern, "Hey bro, everyone's worried about you," to thinly veiled panic. Do you still have the login for the scheduling software? Dad can't find it, to outright desperation. Seriously, dude. Just tell me how you handled the Henderson specs. Their project manager is freaking out. The only one who hasn't reached out much is Julie. She sent 1 email to my personal account about a week after I left. It was long, full of explanations about how she never meant to hurt me and how things with Caleb just happened, and she hoped I could still be friends. At the very end, almost like an afterthought, "If you have time, could you possibly write up how you handled the scheduling? We're having some issues." I deleted it without responding. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Oh, and the truck? Apparently, it's making a weird noise, according to Caleb's latest text. He actually had the balls to ask if I could come look at it. The truck that should have been mine. The truck that was part of my promotion but got handed to him as an engagement present. I laughed out loud and deleted it without responding. Not my truck, not my problem. Meanwhile, I've been at Wilson for 2 weeks now, and it's like I've entered some parallel universe where competence is actually valued. Dave asks for my input on operations. My ideas get implemented instead of ignored. The other employees respect me because of my experience, not because I'm the boss's son. Yesterday, I completely redesigned their service call routing system, and Dave was so impressed. He gave me a bonus on the spot. A bonus for doing my job well. What a concept! About a week into my new job, I met someone too. Kate. She's an architect I met on a job site where we're doing the plumbing for a new office building. Smart, funny, direct, not playing any games or putting on airs. Kate's nothing like Julie. Where Julie was always polished and proper, Kate's real. Shows up to dates in jeans and boots, can talk sports as easily as she talks design, and calls me out on my bullshit in the most refreshing way. She doesn't play games or tell me what I want to hear. With Kate, what you see is what you get. Our 3rd date, We went hiking to this waterfall I'd been wanting to check out for years. Just two people genuinely enjoying each other's company. I showed her some of the desperate texts from my family, and she just shook her head. They had gold and treated it like dirt. Their loss, my gain. Then she kissed me, and I forgot all about the family business for the rest of the day. Maybe for months as well. This weekend, Kate and I were at the hardware store grabbing stuff for my bathroom remodel when I spotted them. Caleb and Julie. Great. Just when I was enjoying a normal Saturday with my girlfriend, Kate squeezed my hand when Julie noticed us and called out. Caleb turned around, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Hey, Ethan. I kept it brief. Hey. Julie's eyes immediately went to Kate, then our joined hands. How have you been? Good. Really good. This is Kate. I introduced them, watching Julie size her up. Kate, absolute champion she is, smiled and shook their hands. Nice to meet you both. I've heard a lot about you. The look of panic on Caleb's face? Priceless. Renovating Ethan's bathroom, Kate explained when Julie asked about our supplies. I'm an architect handling the design. An architect? That's impressive, Julie said, looking suddenly self-conscious. I'm an office manager at my family's company, I added, because why not twist the knife a little? Turns out they were there because of the truck. You know, it kept making weird noises, and Caleb was clueless how to fix it. I couldn't resist. The company truck, the one that was supposed to be mine. Caleb had the decency to look embarrassed. Yeah, that one. Kate, ever the pro, smoothly created an exit strategy with some fake dinner reservations. As we turned to leave, Julie hesitated. Can I have a moment alone? Kate gave me a questioning look, but I nodded. She squeezed my hand before stepping aside. Julie sighed, looking more tired than I'd ever seen her. The engagement. Taking it slow. Translation, Caleb's true colors were showing. The business. Not the same without you, apparently. They'd hired 2 people to replace me, and they were still falling behind. Caleb, different since you left. Yeah, actually having to work for once in his life will do that. She shifted awkwardly, tucking her hair behind her ear. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for coming between you and your brother. I almost laughed. Not in a mean way, but in a wow, you really didn't get it way. Julie, you weren't the problem. You were just a symptom of a much bigger issue. My family never valued me. The truck, that was just the final straw. She chewed her lip, glancing toward Kate. She seems nice. You two look good together. We are, I said without hesitation. She sees me for who I am. Julie nodded, like she understood, but I wasn't sure she fully did either way. I wasn't sticking around to explain. While driving home, my phone rang. Mom. I don't know why I answered. She sounded shocked I picked up, but recovered quickly, launching straight into the guilt trip. They miss me. The business is struggling. Caleb is overwhelmed. Sunday dinners aren't the same without me. I let her ramble, waiting for the inevitable request. You should come by soon. Maybe we can figure things out. I'm busy every Sunday for the foreseeable future, I told her, keeping my voice level. Kate, overhearing from the passenger seat, smirked. Want me to say, I told you so, or would you prefer to just bask in the Schadenfreude? Definitely basking, I said, grinning. Later that night, as we lay tangled on the couch watching some random true crime doc, Kate glanced at me. Would you ever consider going back to the family business? I didn't even have to think about it. Not even for a second. She smiled, satisfied with that answer. I don't know what'll happen with Taylor and Sons Plumbing. Maybe they'll figure it out. Maybe they'll crash and burn. Either way, not my problem. What I do know is that sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away from people who don't value you, even if they're family, especially if they're family. It took me 15 years and a company truck to learn that lesson. Better late than never. Weeks blurred into a comfortable rhythm. Work at Wilson was fulfilling, not just because I was good at it, but because I felt seen. Dave trusted my judgment, and the team respected my experience. Kate's presence in my life was a constant anchor, a reminder that I was worthy of genuine connection and happiness. The ghost of Taylor and Sons was fading, becoming a dull ache instead of a searing pain. Then the phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, assuming it was another debt collector hounding me for some medical bill or the like, but something made me answer. Ethan? It's Brenda from Henderson Specs. Brenda Henderson, project manager for Henderson Specs, one of the biggest commercial clients my dad had managed to snag, mostly on the strength of my proposal and subsequent meticulous service. A client I'd personally nursed along for years. The client Caleb had almost single-handedly lost with his incompetence. My guard went up. Brenda. Hi. What can I do for you? I kept my tone neutral, betraying nothing. Ethan, I know you're not at Taylor & Sons anymore, and honestly, I wasn't sure if I should even call you. But we're in a bind. A serious bind. Her voice was strained, bordering on panicked. What's going on? I asked, concern overriding my resentment. I might hate my family, but I'd always taken pride in doing my job well, and Henderson Specs had been a significant accomplishment. The plumbing in the new wing is a disaster. A complete and utter disaster. We're 3 weeks behind schedule. The inspections are failing left and right. And frankly, your brother, well, he's not returning my calls. My jaw clenched. Caleb. Of course. What's the specific problem? Everything. The pipe fittings are wrong. The drainage is inadequate. The pressure tests are failing. The whole thing needs to be ripped out and redone. We're looking at massive delays, cost overruns. It's a nightmare. I could hear the desperation in her voice. Brenda was usually a calm, collected professional. This had to be bad. I'm sorry to hear that, Brenda, I said genuinely. I wish I could help, but I'm with Wilson Plumbing now. And, Ethan, please, she cut me off. I know it's a long shot, but could you at least take a look? Just give us your opinion? We're willing to pay you as a consultant, whatever it takes. We trusted Taylor & Sons because you were running things. We don't know what to do. I hesitated. This was a dangerous game. Getting involved could reignite the family drama, drag me back into the toxic mess. I'd worked so hard to escape. But the thought of Henderson Specs, a project I'd poured my heart and soul into, being ruined by Caleb's incompetence, it gnawed at me. Let me think about it, Brenda, I said finally. I'll call you back tomorrow. I hung up, my mind racing. I told Kate about the call that night. We were making dinner, chopping vegetables in the comfortable silence that had become our norm. Henderson Specs, huh? She said, raising an eyebrow. That's the big commercial client you were telling me about. The one Caleb almost lost? The same, I confirmed. And now they're begging me to come back as a consultant because Caleb screwed it up so badly. Kate leaned against the counter, arms crossed. So, what are you going to do? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to tell them to go to hell. It's their problem. They made their bed. But another part of me, I can't stand the thought of that project going down the drain because of Caleb's incompetence. It's tempting, isn't it? Kate said softly. To swoop in and save the day, prove to everyone how essential you are. Maybe, I conceded. Or maybe it's just professional pride. I hate seeing good work destroyed. Or maybe, Kate countered, with a knowing smile, it's a little bit of both. She walked over and wrapped her arms around me, resting her chin on my shoulder. Whatever you decide, I support you. Just be careful, Ethan. Don't let them drag you back into their drama. I won't, I promised. But I need to see it, Kate. Just once. I need to see how bad it really is. The next morning, I called Brenda back. Okay, I said. I'll do it. I'll come take a look. But I'm doing it as a favor, and I'm setting some ground rules. I'm just giving you my assessment. I'm not getting involved in the actual work, and I'm not dealing with my family. You have to handle all the communication. Brenda agreed, her relief palpable. We set up a time for me to meet her at the Henderson Spec site the following day. Pulling up to the Henderson Spec site, I felt a pang of something. Pride? Nostalgia? It was a massive project, a sprawling new wing attached to an existing hospital. I'd spent months working with the architects, the engineers, the construction crews, meticulously planning every detail of the plumbing system. It had been challenging, demanding, but ultimately rewarding. Now it looked wounded. Scars of unfinished work, exposed pipes dangling haphazardly, construction materials scattered everywhere. It was a far cry from the organized, efficient operation I'd left behind. Brenda met me at the entrance, her face etched with worry. "Thanks for coming, Ethan," she said, shaking my hand. "I really appreciate it." "Show me what I'm dealing with," I said, getting straight to the point. What followed was a tour of horrors. Mismatched pipe fittings that would never pass inspection. Incorrectly sloped drainage lines that guaranteed future backups. Insufficient water pressure due to undersized pipes. The entire system was a disaster waiting to happen. "It's worse than I thought," I admitted, shaking my head. "We know," Brenda said grimly. "We've tried to get your dad and Caleb to address it, but they just keep making excuses. They're blaming the contractors, blaming the suppliers, blaming us." I bit back a scathing remark. Blaming others was a Taylor family specialty. "How much of this is done?" I asked. "About 80%, Brenda said. "They've already closed up some of the walls, installed fixtures. It's going to be a monumental task to fix it." I spent the next few hours meticulously examining the system, taking notes, making calculations. The more I saw, the more my anger simmered, not just at my family, but at the sheer incompetence and negligence that had led to this mess. Finally, I closed my notebook and looked at Brenda. "Okay," I said. "Here's the situation. The entire system needs to be ripped out and redone. There's no way around it. You're looking at significant delays, probably several months, and a substantial cost increase." Brenda's face fell. "I was afraid of that," she said quietly. "I can give you a detailed report outlining all the problems and recommending a course of action," I continued. "But I can't do the work myself. I'm with Wilson now, and I'm not going to undermine my current employer." "I understand," Brenda said. "But do you have any recommendations? Any plumbers you trust who could take on this kind of salvage operation?" I thought for a moment. There were a few competent plumbers at Taylor & Sons, guys I'd trained myself, but they were loyal to my dad, and I doubted they'd be willing to work with me, even as a consultant. Then an idea sparked, a risky idea, but one that might just work. "There is one plumber I trust," I said slowly. "Someone who's meticulous, experienced, and not afraid to take on a challenge. But he's unconventional." "Unconventional how?" Brenda asked, intrigued. "Let's just say he has a unique approach to plumbing," I said with a wry smile. "But he gets the job done. And he's available." "Who is it?" Brenda asked, her eyes filled with hope. "His name is Jake." Jake was a character. I'd met him years ago, on a particularly challenging commercial job. He was a freelance plumber, known for his unorthodox methods and his refusal to play by the rules. He was a brilliant plumber, no doubt, but he was also a bit of a renegade, a maverick who marched to the beat of his own drum. I'd lost touch with him over the years, but I knew he was still working in the area. Finding him took some digging, a few phone calls to old contacts, but eventually, I tracked him down to a small plumbing supply shop on the outskirts of town. I found him hunched over a workbench, meticulously soldering a copper fitting. He was a wiry man with a grizzled beard, piercing blue eyes, and a permanent squint that suggested he spent most of his time staring at pipes in dimly lit spaces. "Jake?" I said, approaching him cautiously. He looked up, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Who's asking?" "Ethan Taylor," I said. We worked together on the old Miller building downtown, remember? Recognition flickered in his eyes. Taylor. Yeah, I remember you. Kid who knew his stuff, actually listened to what I had to say. What do you want? I need your help, I said, getting straight to the point. I've got a project that's a complete disaster, and you're the only plumber I trust to fix it. Jake leaned back, sizing me up. Disaster, huh? What kind of disaster? I told him about Henderson's specs, about Caleb's incompetence, about the mess the project had become. As I spoke, I could see a spark of interest ignite in his eyes. So, you're telling me this is a salvage job, he said when I was finished. A clusterfuck of epic proportions. Exactly, I confirmed. Jake grinned, a rare sight that transformed his weathered face. I like the sound of that. I'm getting bored with these cookie-cutter suburban houses. Give me a challenge, something that'll make me sweat. What's the catch? The catch is, it's my family's company that screwed it up, I admitted, and I'm not getting involved. You'll be dealing directly with the client. Jake frowned. Your family, huh? That could be a problem. I know, I said, but Brenda Henderson is a professional. She just wants the job done right, and she trusts me. Jake was silent for a moment, considering. Then he nodded. All right, he said. I'm in, but I'm doing things my way. No micromanaging, no interference. I call the shots, and I get paid what I'm worth. Agreed, I said, relief flooding through me. I'll put you in touch with Brenda. As I walked away, I couldn't help but smile. Jake was a wild card, a loose cannon, but he was also a brilliant plumber, and he was exactly what Henderson specs needed. I didn't hear anything for a couple of weeks. I figured Jake was knee-deep in pipes, wrestling with the mess at Henderson specs. I was deliberately keeping my distance, honoring my agreement with Brenda, and avoiding any contact with my family. Then, one evening, I got a call from my mom. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Ethan, honey, can you please just talk to your father? He's beside himself. Her voice was pleading, desperate. About what, Mom? I asked, bracing myself. About this plumber you recommended to Brenda Henderson. This madman they hired to fix the mess at Henderson Specs. I bit back a smile. So, Jake was making his presence known. What's the problem? I asked, feigning ignorance. The problem? The problem is, he's tearing everything apart. He's ripping out walls, dismantling fixtures. Your father says he's making things worse. Maybe your father should have thought about that before Caleb screwed up the job, I said, my voice hardening. Ethan, please don't be like that. Your father's reputation is on the line. He's afraid this will ruin Taylor and Sons. Maybe it should, I said, my anger bubbling to the surface. Maybe it's time for Dad to face the consequences of his actions, of his favoritism, of his incompetence. Ethan, how can you say such things? He's your father. He's also a man who consistently devalued me, undermined me, and handed everything to my brother on a silver platter. I'm done, Mom. I'm done with playing the dutiful son. Let Dad deal with the mess he created. I hung up, cutting off her protests. I knew I was being harsh, but I was past caring. I'd spent too many years sacrificing my own happiness for my family's sake. It was time for them to reap what they'd sown. The next day, I got a call from Dad. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Ethan, he said, his voice strained, almost pleading. We need to talk. About what, Dad? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. About this plumber you sent to Henderson Specs. This Jake. What about him? I asked, playing dumb. He's destroying everything. He's ripping out walls, dismantling fixtures, making a complete mess of the place. He's making us look like complete incompetents. Maybe that's because you are complete incompetence, Dad, I said, unable to hold back any longer. Maybe it's time you faced the truth about Caleb's abilities and about your own. Don't talk to me like that, Ethan, he roared. I'm your father! I built this business. I provided for you and your brother. You also consistently favored Caleb over me. Despite the fact that I was the one who actually built this business, I retorted. You gave him everything, handed him opportunities he didn't deserve, and undermined my efforts at every turn. Well, guess what, Dad? The chickens have come home to roost. Caleb screwed up. Jake is cleaning up the mess. And you're finally facing the consequences of your actions. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? He accused. You're trying to ruin me, to destroy Taylor and Sons. I'm not doing anything, Dad, I said. I'm just watching you reap what you've sown. You made your bed, now lie in it. I hung up, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. I'd finally stood up to my father, spoken my truth. But the victory felt hollow, tainted by the years of resentment and pain that had led to this moment. A few days later, I got a call from Brenda. Her voice was different this time, lighter, almost cheerful. Ethan, she said, I just wanted to give you an update on the Henderson Specs project, and to thank you again for recommending Jake. He's amazing. Amazing? I echoed, surprised. What's he done? He's completely transformed the place. He ripped out all the faulty plumbing, redesigned the system from scratch, and he's installing everything to code. The inspections are passing. The schedule is back on track. It's like a miracle. I knew Jake was good, I said. But it's more than that, Ethan, Brenda said. He's also been incredibly professional, communicative, and honest. He's kept me informed every step of the way, explained all the problems and solutions in detail. He's a breath of fresh air after dealing with your family. I smiled, despite myself. I'm glad to hear it, Brenda. I'm glad things are finally turning around. They are, Ethan, she said. And it's all thanks to you. You saved this project. You saved our reputation. We're forever in your debt. I didn't do anything, I protested. Jake did all the work, but you pointed us in the right direction, Ethan. You gave us hope when we thought everything was lost. You're a good man, Ethan Taylor. Don't ever forget that. Her words resonated within me, a soothing balm on years of self-doubt and resentment. Maybe, just maybe, I was more than just the family workhorse. Maybe I was actually good at what I did. Maybe I was worthy of respect, of admiration, of love. I didn't see Jake again until a few weeks later. I was at a plumbing supply store, picking up some materials for a small project at home, when I spotted him across the aisle, haggling with a salesman over the price of copper fittings. I approached him cautiously. Jake, I said. He looked up, his eyes narrowed in recognition. Taylor, he said, a grin spreading across his face. What brings you to these parts? Just picking up some supplies, I said. I heard you worked a miracle at Henderson Specs, Jake chuckled. Miracle? Nah, just good plumbing. Cleaned up their mess, installed a system that actually works. The client's happy, the inspectors are happy, everyone's happy. I'm glad to hear it, I said. I owe you one, Jake. Nah, you don't owe me anything, he said, waving his hand dismissively. I just like a good challenge. Besides, he added, leaning in conspiratorially, I heard your dad's business is circling the drain. Good riddance, I say. They had it coming. You heard about that, huh? I said, feeling a pang of guilt. Everyone's heard about it, Jake said. Word on the street is, Taylor and Sons are on the verge of bankruptcy. Creditors are circling. Clients are jumping ship. The whole thing's about to implode. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt a sense of satisfaction, of vindication, but another part of me felt a deep sadness, a sense of loss. No matter how much I resented my family, they were still my family. And the thought of their business, their legacy, collapsing, it was a bitter pill to swallow. Anyway, Jake said, breaking the silence, I gotta run. Got another disaster to clean up. He winked and walked away, leaving me standing there, lost in thought. As I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was at a crossroads. I'd finally escaped my family's shadow, found my own path, built a life that was truly my own. But their fate was still intertwined with mine, their actions still reverberating through my existence. What did I do? What could I do? The news hit me like a punch to the gut. Driving home from work, I listened to the local radio station for news and traffic, like any other day. Then the anchor made the announcement that caused me to almost drive into the median. Taylor and Sons Plumbing, a family-owned business serving the county for over 30 years, has officially filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection this morning. The company, owned by Robert Taylor, cited mismanagement and a downturn in the local economy as primary factors for the failure. A sick feeling churned in my stomach. This was it. The end. The culmination of years of bad decisions, favoritism, and incompetence. It was all crashing down. I pulled over to the side of the road, my hands shaking. Chapter 11 meant reorganization, but in reality, it was often a prelude to liquidation. Taylor and Sons was finished. I knew I should feel happy, vindicated. I should be celebrating the downfall of the people who had wronged me for so many years. But all I felt was grief. A deep, visceral grief for the loss of something that had been a part of me for so long, no matter how dysfunctional it had been. Kate called me later that night, her voice filled with concern. "Ethan, I heard the news. Are you okay?" "No," I admitted. "I'm not okay." I knew it was coming, but it still hurts. "I know it does," she said softly. "But you can't blame yourself, Ethan. You did everything you could. You tried to help them, but they wouldn't listen. It's not your fault." "I know," I said. "But what are they going to do?" "Dad, Mom, Caleb, they're going to lose everything. They'll figure it out," Kate said. "They're resilient people. They'll find a way to move on." But I knew it wouldn't be that easy. My dad had poured his entire life into Taylor and Sons. It was his identity, his legacy. Losing it would be like losing a part of himself. That night, I lay awake in bed, tossing and turning, my mind racing. I thought about my dad, about Caleb, about all the years of conflict and resentment, and I realized that no matter what had happened in the past, they were still my family, and I couldn't stand by and watch them lose everything. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I called Dave Wilson. "Dave, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Sure, Ethan," he said. "What's up?" I went to his office and explained the situation, about Taylor and Sons filing for bankruptcy, about my family losing everything. I told him about the grief I was feeling, the sense of responsibility I couldn't shake. "I know this sounds crazy, Dave," I said, "but I need to do something. I need to try to help them." Dave listened patiently, his expression unreadable. When I was finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Ethan," he said, "I understand where you're coming from. Family is important, but you have to be realistic. Taylor and Sons is a sinking ship. There's probably nothing you can do to save it." "I know," I said, "but I have to try. And I have an idea. I know how my dad runs things, how to fix the mistakes." "What's your idea?" Dave asked, his curiosity piqued. "I want to buy Taylor and Sons out of bankruptcy," I said. "I want to take over the business and try to turn it around." Dave stared at me in disbelief. "Are you serious, Ethan? You want to leave Wilson Plumbing, where you have a partnership track, a bright future, and go back to the business that treated you like dirt?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I know it sounds crazy, but it's what I have to do. It's the only way I can help my family. And it's the only way I can put my own demons to rest." Dave was silent for a long moment, considering. Then he nodded slowly. "All right, Ethan," he said. "I respect your decision, and I'm willing to help you." "You are?" I said, surprised. "Yes," Dave said. "I know you're a talented plumber and a good businessman. And I believe in you. I'm willing to give you a loan to buy Taylor and Sons out of bankruptcy. But I'm setting some conditions." "Conditions?" I asked. "Yes," Dave said. "First, You have to promise me that you won't let your family interfere with your management of the business. You have to run things your way, and they have to respect your decisions. Second, you have to agree to a repayment plan for the loan. You have to show me that you're serious about making this work. And third, you have to promise me that you'll take care of yourself. You can't let this consume you. You have to maintain a balance in your life. Spend time with Kate. Take care of your health. I nodded, tears welling up in my eyes. I promise, Dave, I said. I promise to do all those things. Thank you. Thank you for believing in me. I believe in you, Ethan, Dave said. Now go save your family's business. The next few months were the hardest of my life. I left Wilson Plumbing on good terms, armed with Dave's loan and his unwavering support. I navigated the complex legal process of buying Taylor & Sons out of bankruptcy, dealing with creditors, lawyers, and bankruptcy trustees. It was a daunting task, but I was determined to succeed. I met with my parents and Caleb, explaining my plan. They were skeptical at first, resistant to the idea of me taking over the business. But I was firm, insistent. I told them that I was doing this for them, that I wanted to save their legacy. But I also made it clear that I would be running things my way and they would have to respect my decisions. Reluctantly, they agreed. I took over the reins of Taylor & Sons, and I immediately set about implementing the changes I knew were necessary. I streamlined the operations, modernized the scheduling system, and implemented strict quality control measures. I rehired some of the best plumbers who had left the company, and I invested in training programs to improve the skills of the existing staff. It was slow going at first. The company was saddled with debt, and the reputation had taken a beating. But gradually, things began to turn around. The quality of our work improved, customer satisfaction increased, and new contracts started coming in. I reached out to Brenda Henderson, apologizing for the mess that had been made at the Henderson Specs project. I assured her that Taylor & Sons was committed to making things right, and I offered her a significant discount on future services. She was hesitant at first, but eventually, she agreed to give us another chance. Caleb, to my surprise, stepped up. He started taking responsibility for his mistakes, learning the business from the ground up, and developing genuine relationships with clients. He even enrolled in some business management courses to improve his skills. My dad, too, began to change. He stepped back from the day-to-day operations, allowing me to make the decisions, and he started focusing on what he did best, building relationships with clients and mentoring the younger plumbers. Slowly but surely, Taylor & Sons began to rise from the ashes. Years later, I sat in my office, gazing out at the bustling cityscape. Taylor & Sons was thriving again, bigger and stronger than ever. We had a solid reputation, a loyal clientele, and a team of talented plumbers who were dedicated to providing quality service. Caleb was now a partner in the business, a competent and respected leader. My dad was semi-retired, but he still came into the office a few days a week, offering his wisdom and experience. Kate and I were married, living in a beautiful home and raising 2 wonderful children. She was still my rock, my confidante, my greatest supporter, and I was finally at peace. I'd saved my family's business, restored their legacy, and put my own demons to rest. I'd learned that forgiveness is possible, that redemption is attainable, and that even the most dysfunctional families can find a way to heal. The phone rang, breaking my reverie. It was Brenda Henderson. "Ethan," she said, her voice warm and familiar, "I just wanted to let you know that we're putting out a bid for the plumbing work on our new hospital expansion, and I was hoping that Taylor & Sons would be interested in submitting a proposal." I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, Brenda," I said. "We'll put together our best team. It's an honor." After I hung up the phone, I took a deep breath and said, "It's full circle. The scars of Sons may never fully fade, but I'm not afraid of them anymore." Now they just tell a story of how I became the man I am today.